Good morning, everybody. My name is Brett Stevens. I am the discipleship pastor here at Gateway. I'm continuing our series here on the Sermon on the Mount. We've been talking a lot about the way of Jesus and the life that he called his followers to, what he thought it meant to live a good life. And we're coming now to the last few weeks of this series and the last portion of his teaching here. And it's an interesting thing about how ubiquitous this metaphor is, the one of a path or a journey for our life. It's common today. This is a poem that I assume most of you have heard of, even if you've never heard the poem in its entirety. It's a very famous poem. And this is not unique at all, though, for this poet to approach life this way. Many of us have heard this type of a metaphor of our life as a journey or a traveling. And there's so many parallels there, right? Our life tends to go in a direction, and by that I mean as we progress, we get older, we get more experienced, we tend to find ourselves doing things in a succession. So the most obvious example of this, of course, is things like education going into a career, right? You go through school sequentially, and then you get a job, and your job tends to lead to another related job, maybe a promotion, right? There's a sense of progression as though you're traveling somewhere, right? This metaphor seems so natural to us, and even 2,000 years ago, this was a common metaphor. You may read at various points, if you were sort of reading in the letters in the New Testament or reading the Gospels, people will talk about living your life in a certain way. Literally, that word that they use means to walk. Walk in a certain way, they'll say, because they understood life as a journey, life as a progression, life as traveling somewhere. And so, I think you are probably all familiar with this very metaphor, that your life is a journey. But I want to narrow in on that, as Jesus is in this teaching. Your spiritual life is a journey. That is, you progress in your faith, and I don't mean this as like stepping from one thing to a better thing like you progress in your career, but what I mean is you grow and develop. Right now, we have kids upstairs who are being taught about the Bible. They're being taught about the Jesus way. Now, the things that they're being taught are similar to what we're teaching down here. They're being taught the same truths, but they're being taught them in a different way. I'd liken it to this. When I was in elementary school and I was learning math, I was told, you cannot, it's not allowed, you never do this, subtract a smaller number or a bigger number from a smaller number. It's always got to be start with the biggest number and subtract the smaller number from it, right? You were probably taught the same thing in elementary school. Well, I got a little older, and then I was taught, well, yeah, actually, that's fine. You're allowed to subtract the bigger number from the smaller number. There are negative numbers. Surprise, that's a new thing. Before, it would have been really hard to explain to young me what negative numbers were. But older me could understand negative numbers. But then I was taught rules about division. And you can only divide this way, right? It's got to be whole numbers or, whatever. And then I learned about there's all kinds of things you can do. And then I start learning about imaginary numbers, and on the list goes, right? And there's a progression there. It wasn't that they were lying to me before. It wasn't that they were teaching me something that wasn't true. But at one time, I was ready for one truth. And as I developed, as I matured, I was ready to learn more, to follow more closely, to understand more difficult concepts. And the same is true in our spiritual life. As we grow older, as we are part of the faith longer, as we encounter new ideas, new people, new situations, we grow, we mature, we learn new things. So today, you are somewhere on a spiritual journey. Maybe you've been in the church a long time. Maybe this is the first time you've ever set foot in a church. Maybe you came long ago, stopped coming, and you've come back. Maybe you have lots of questions. Maybe you think you have lots of answers. Wherever you are, you are somewhere on this journey. And I don't want you to think I'm telling you, you're on a journey, come and arrive to where I am. Not at all. Pastor Tony and I talk about this all the time. We are both learning, growing, maturing. We, like you, are on a journey. So let's go to what Jesus is talking about. Because Jesus imagines for all of his followers that they are on a journey. And he wants them to follow with him on this journey. And he wants them to see their journey in a particular light. So this is just a few verses, but there's a lot in here. Here we are. So Jesus says, enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow is the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. So, in Jesus' day, roads were not like roads today. There were some, right? The Roman, one of the things that the Romans did is that they connected the world by roads. You may have heard the phrase, all roads lead to Rome. There's a reason for that, because in the day that these roads were built, Romans were building them, and of course they wanted to get back to Rome, so they would go out and they would build these chains of roads, but the center of it was Rome. So there were roads that were built, like packed and paved and made with material, but most roads weren't like that. When I was at my undergrad, I went to Bethel College, they had sidewalks, around to the different buildings. But Bethel College had been around for a little while, and as it grew and expanded, they would add new buildings, and they would add sidewalks from the existing sidewalks to these buildings. But often what would happen when you have this configuration that develops over time, the sidewalks weren't the most efficient path. And so most students had paths that they preferred to take that weren't necessarily sidewalks. And you could tell where these paths were, because all the grass died. And the more traveled that way was, the more important that building was, the more students walked that way, the wider and more worn down the path became. The same was true in Bible times, right? You've got these villages and towns and communities all over the place, lots of small little communities. And people get everywhere by walking. Either they're walking, they're bringing their donkey along, they've got a cart, whatever it is. And so as people walk, as they travel, they wear down a path. And in these smaller communities, these different places, the paths would be small. There'd only be a few people kind of going to the main roads. But as you would merge onto these larger roads where more people were traveling, the paths would get wider. You'd have more foot traffic. You'd have more carts and stuff. And more of it would get packed down, widened out, and used. So Jesus is making this metaphor. He's talking about something that people intuitively understand. There are narrow roads and there are wide roads. And he's saying, the way that everybody's going, that road that most people are on, may not be the road you want to be on. The way that most people live their life, the way that most people think, the choices that most people make are not the choices you want to make. And you might ask, well, what choices are we talking about? What way are we talking about? I need a little clarification here, Jesus. Well, remember where this teaching is. He's already talked about the Beatitudes. He's already talked about 6 case studies from the law about, you've heard it said this, but I say this. Yeah, you've heard it said this, I say this. And so now he's saying this. Everybody's going a certain way, and I don't want you to miss it. The way that I'm leading. Everybody's going this way. You're just going to be naturally carried in this way. If you're just looking around and saying, where should I go? Everyone's going this way, I'll go that way. You're going to miss it. What I'm teaching, the life that I'm calling you to, is different. It's hard to find. It's hard to follow. And this should make sense. If you've been here for the rest of our sermons, if you've been reading this passage, you understand what he's talking about. When he talks about who's blessed in life, who's living the good life, it's the poor, the hurting, the hungry. It's those who are fighting for peace when people don't want peace. It's those who are standing up for what's right when people don't want you to stand up for what's right. It's those who are being targeted and harassed because they refuse to be quiet about what it means to be just and right. He's talked about, you've heard this saying, you've grown your whole life with this teaching. People are telling you, this is the way. Don't do this, don't do that, do this. Follow the list and you're good. And I'm telling you, it's so much deeper. It's so much harder. That your anger can become like murder. That the thoughts going on in your head as you look at people can become adultery. You've heard it said, love your friends, but if somebody does wrong, make sure you get even. But I tell you, don't get even. Surrender your right to get what you deserve, to build bridges, to love your enemies. That is the Jesus way. And he's saying, this is the narrow path. And I'm calling you to walk it with me. So today, I want to give you 3 questions. Because you're somewhere on a spiritual journey. 3 questions to think about where you are in your journey and where you want to go. And the first is this: what gate are you entering through? You see, Jesus makes 2 metaphors here. One, he talks about a gate, and one he talks about a road. And you might think, oh, well, it's just parallel to the same thing, right? But there's a difference here, right? The idea is this: some places are accessible by a particular road, right? So I'll give you an example from Jesus' day. Jerusalem, right? Jerusalem is a city, but it's up on this big, hill, basically, like this sort of, it's steep, it's rocky, it's not easy to access. But there's a road that goes up to it, right? So to get on that road, you have to start at the base, right? There's all these intersections, you come down the mountain or whatever, and there's these intersections, roads going here and there and north and south and whatever. So you come there, and you're like, all right, I want to get up to Jerusalem, so this is the road I've got to take. And here I go, winding my way up. It's kind of like a modern example would be our interchanges, right? If you're at, say, Fort Wayne, right, and you're driving down to Fort Wayne, you might take 69 down or whatever. Well, you want to get somewhere in Fort Wayne, so you get off on 469 or whatever, right? And there's like this loop that goes around it. And so you're following to the right place. But once you found your exit, you get off on your exit. Well, you still have to drive to your location of Fort Wayne, right? The exit doesn't just take you there. It's like that you choose your exit point. This is the direction I'm going, but now you've got to follow the road to get there. So for you, on your spiritual journey, you might be here today and you're not so sure about this Jesus way, this Jesus thing, whatever. Or maybe you've said, yeah, I want to follow Jesus, but I don't know what that means. Like, I was 6 and I prayed a prayer. I'm following Jesus, right? That's good enough? So today I'm asking you the question, which gate are you entering through? Where are you heading? Because you've got to make a choice. Am I going to go the way that most people go? Or am I going to choose intentionally, today, right now, I want to follow Jesus' way. I want to make those sacrifices, to love the unlovable, to build bridges towards my enemies, to master my inner life so that I can honor God in my thoughts as well as my actions, to live that good life of humility and service. Today, that's what I want to do. I'm not there yet, but I want that. So I'm asking you, which gate are you entering through? That's the first question. No, maybe you've already resolved that. Maybe you've already entered a gate. My question is this: are you staying on the path? You see, the road's narrow. So I want to give you an example here. There's this idea in navigation, right, where if you don't have a clear, today we have all roads, right? If you're navigating, you're just like, well, I see the sign that tells me I'm on the road that's named the right thing, so I'm just going to, keep going or whatever. I remember a day, and most of you here remember this as well, when if you wanted to get somewhere, you got directions that were like this. You're going to go through 3 stoplights, and then you'll see the Wendy's on the corner, and you know what I'm saying, right? That's navigation, where you pick landmarks. And that's true whether you're on a road or off the road. But the problem is, sometimes you want to take a shortcut. And you say, well, I remember that there's a Wendy's on the path, but I think I know a better way to get to the Wendy's. And so you start driving around, you're like, I didn't get to see the Wendy's, but I was told after the Wendy's, there's a Walmart, and I see the Walmart, so we'll go toward that. And, well, it's the wrong Walmart, and pretty soon you're way off track, right? So the idea in navigation is this. If you have a set of check marks, a set of landmarks, don't skip them. You go to the first one, then you go to the next one, then you go to the next one. You feel like, I want to take the shortcut, right? But the reality is, if you skip the check marks, you get off track. The same is true in your spiritual life. This is a journey to become the person that you want to be. Tony often says it this way. Jesus makes life better and makes me better at life. Not instantly, not overnight, but it's a journey to be the person you want to be, to live the good life that you want to have, the life that Jesus has laid out in the Sermon on the Mount. And there are no shortcuts. There's no substitute. It's just time. It's discipline. It's practice. It's community. It's sharing. It's making mistakes and learning from them. Now, if you've been on this road a long time, and I know that I've experienced this, many of you have experienced this, sometimes you get tired. You get worn out, and you say, I just want to do something different. Let's try this way. And you veer off the path, hoping for something different, hoping for something easier. So I want to ask you today, examine your life. If you've entered the gate, are you staying on the path? And the last question I have is this. Are you thinking about turning back? Are you thinking about turning back? Let's be honest, guys. Sometimes on the roads, like actual travel of life, you start going a direction and you say, maybe this isn't for me. A few weeks ago, I went with my brother over to Baltimore. And while we're traveling, we go through this horrible storm, like pounding rain, I can barely see. And then the storm clears, and we're like, all right, I think we made it through. And then the GPS says, there are storms ahead, dangerous storms, but there's a safer route. Okay, we'll take it. Well, the safer route is going like one of these things. It adds a significant amount of time to our journey. And partway through, we still get into some storms. And so about this time, we're thinking, should we just go back to the route we were taking? We thought about turning back. In your spiritual life, you may be thinking about turning back. Following Jesus is hard. Maybe it's cost you friendships. Maybe you're just not sure you believe anymore. Maybe the church has burnt you. Wherever you're at, you may be thinking about turning back. So if that's where you're at in your spiritual journey, I want to remind you of the life that Jesus has called. Not that it's going to be easy, not that it's going to be pain-free, but that it will be good. C.S. Lewis, in the intro to one of his books, said it this way. There are better things ahead than any we leave behind. You'll have to leave stuff behind. It'll hurt. It'll be hard. Guys, I know what you're going through. But I hope you won't turn back. Now, some of you here today, you may be on a different path already. You may be following a different way. You never really said yes to this Jesus way, and now you wonder, is it too late? Is it too late? And to you, I'll ask the same question. Are you thinking about turning back? Because if so, I want to tell you, it's not too late. Today, you can still choose to follow the Jesus way. Today, you can still choose to go through that narrow gate. There is nothing you can have done. There's nothing you can have said or thought. There's no part of your life that will disqualify you. Today, Jesus says, come and follow me. Come on this journey with me. Come walk this road with me. So friends, wherever you're at, I hope today you'll choose to stay on the path, to follow Jesus, to live the good life. So let me pray for you. Holy God, in the journey of life, we want to know you. We want to follow you. And we're here now. You know our history. You know everything we've experienced, the things we've seen, the hurts, the hardships, the heartaches. But we're still here. We're ready. So will you teach us something new today? Will you fill us with your hope, your energy, your strength to continue on this path? And will you walk with us every step of the way? Amen.